When I was young, when I was 7 years old, and then onwards to 10 years old, my grand auntie was living along, the East Coast Road, the Peranakan Homes. Every weekend we will go there, and then when it's tea time, all of us will go to the Chimichin's coffee shop, and then we will order the kaya toast and tea or coffee. Very traditional kind of, and I think that is the coffee shop has the best kaya because they do it on their own, you see. And then what they are also specialized is the Swiss roll, where a lot of people like to go and buy. About the kaya toast, it's the best one I've ever tried. And so when the toast is slightly different because they have those buns, and they will the kaya on it. It's also very personal because you can go to the kitchen and talk to the uncle and tell him how you want your toast to be. So it's very nice. It's a very family kind of cafe. The tiles are like flowery stuff, and then the floor is mosaic, like those old mosaic that you cannot find again in Singapore. There's this particular thermometer that's there, very traditional look. So the whole coffee shop has this very nostalgia kind of feeling when you go there now. This coffee shop has been in Singapore for over 6 years, and the look hasn't changed, I think, from the time they opened until now. The place is very clean, and when you order your toast and for coffee and all that, it's done with loving care because it tastes really good.
This was the familiar sound I used to hear and am still hearing every day at noon below my block in Beach Road. This sewing shop was started in 1952 and it continued till now, sewing the telecong for the Muslim community. It all started 32 years ago when he was in the clothing business. In the past, I would hear music playing from his vinyl player. I can mostly remember songs from Zhang Lu, Huang Qingyuan, the really famous Singapore singer from the 70s, and also Liu Sanjie. He would blast so loud that even the opposite block would be singing the San Ge. It's a bit like karaoke in the open. He would always tell me that oldies are better, the music nowadays all sound the same, and he cannot connect to it. But ever since the player spoiled, he can't play all his favorite songs. So now he displays it up on his wall to keep him company as he sews his days away. Mr. Liao is 73 years old. I asked Mr. Liao what keeps him going. He just smiles and said, the music in his mind, the person in his heart. Personally, for me, the sound of the old sewing machine.
这 Shanghai Dry Cleaning Shop 其实对我来说蛮特别的啦。我以前就读的中学就在这间洗衣店的对面。那时候其实觉得这家洗衣店毫不起眼啦，老实说，看起来旧旧的啦，就是那种你走过不会多看一眼的那种店啦。其实直到2005年，那个时候需要拍一部以洗衣店为背景的一个作品啦。后来跟老板谈了很久，终于就接到这个地方来拍了。很庆幸的其实就是说。这个老板其实保留了那个怀旧风味啦，因为我们要找的地方，我们要拍的东西就是有一点历史气质的这样的一个地方啦。我依稀记得啦，我老板烫衣服的样子有2个特点啊。我发现他把那个熨斗按在衣服上面的时候是很用力的，然后也注意到其实他的脚有在踩一个很特别的板子啦。我的第一个感觉就是他是非常的在很卖命、很卖力的在烫衣服啦，就感觉就好像以前我们的长辈啦，他们可能努力的工作啦，还是什么都好像感觉付出的 的那个努力跟那个力量会比我们多咯。然后刚好老板烫衣服的那个过程，就象征着我们的先辈们刻苦耐劳的精神
以前的火炭是一船一船到那个丹东路那边，那么他们要找那些工人去装在那个麻包袋，还要称了再用罗里这样运输到店里面哦。以前每一包的重量是不一定的，他们都写在那个袋口上，那这包是50 kg、53 kg、40 kg，那重量不一样的。而现在来的火炭呢，就是因为在巴士班江嘛，不可以把那个码头屋弄脏嘛，所以火炭从印尼来已经包装好，一包是30 kg、50 kg、20 kg， 已经包好的，所以就是比较清洁啦，卸货什么也比较容易哦。有时候有人觉得哇，你这件很肮脏哦，可是我们并不在意了，我们做惯了，不觉得没有什么火炭就不臭的。第一，火炭并不会臭没有什么味道，而我做事做生意又很自由，我讲做就讲做，没有什么关系嘛。黑谁洗手？那今晚冲了凉，穿美一点出去还是一样啊，黑也没什么好可怕。我就是不舍得放弃咯，觉得这个生意就是能够做一天就过一天哦，从来没有去想到将来会怎么样，没有打算。做了几十年东西一定会有感情嘛，还有这个店也曾经让我们生活的不错，能够有饭吃，孩子都有读到大学毕业，那都很好啊。
我知道我的朋友很多来这边理发，但是我以前住在这边，感情很浓厚。他们待人接物很好，很亲切感。因为老人有老人的感情嘛，他们这一代的人跟我们生活的距离不远沟通也是很方便嘛。移民厅的人也有来这边关税局的人都有来，有些老师也有来这边我们跟不上新的潮流，去什么那个美发院给女孩子来理我们都要我们的这个传统的来理，比较舒服有些的地方，它只是理你几根这个长毛以后，那个耳朵那个脸它没有跟你刮了，他们都有设备来跟我们服务嘛，所以它对我们很重要好像现在你们那个化妆师剪几根头发就可以了，我们是要剪到高一点，比较凉快一点。像我们这样的头发剪了很神气，很凉快，很适合于我们的生活嘛。这些你看新店里面装修哪里有这个灯它这个灯是要挖耳朵的。好像这些玻璃镜这些水分这些他们用的那些刀那些工具都有他们的一个细性我把这家当作是我理发的宝
Sunai Road is an amazing place. Many years ago, this flea market was called the Thief Market. In 1930s, it first started as a meeting point for criminals to hawk their stolen wares. In fact, the rumors is that items and supplies looted from the British Army would mysteriously find their way to Sunai Road. Before the colonial army withdrew in the 1960s, there was one old saying that if you lost your bicycle from your house, just go down to Sunai Road and buy it back. Take a walk now and you can see people bargaining aggressively. You can get all kinds of things like old clothes, cassette tapes, old vinyl, LD, 80s magazine, you name it, they have it. And sometimes the most unexpected things. Anything retro, you can find here. And what I love about this place is the organized mess. Totally different from clean and systematic Singapore. To me, it is Singapore's oldest slime. And to me, this is real Singapore. I think it is something very unusual because where we live in the city, we rarely have a chance to see such a kind of trading ground where, in fact, in the 1960s, this is what happened. So when I go there, it just brings back lots of memory about how Singapore used to be. Every time I go there, it's also like going back to unenclosed museum where you can see things which you don't get to see on a normal daily life.
The old Lim Chu Kang bus stop is really a special place to me, as it was just outside my army camp during my 2 years of national service. During that time, we only get to book out on Saturday. When we book out, we have to wait for our bus to bring us to the nearest MRT station. And you know, at that time, there was only one bus service. So if we miss our bus, we had to wait for about 30 minutes. But it was really okay because when we get to book out, you know, there was just this excitement in the air. But you know, when we book in on Sunday night, 2359, it was a totally different scenario. It was just a stark contrast. There was just this heaviness in the air, and we really do not know why. I guess this is the so-called booking blues. The old Lim Chu Kang bus stop is still around, and probably the oldest bus stop left in Singapore. But I think what is the most beautiful is that she continues to stand there and silently witness all the army boys' ups and downs during their book out and their book-in.
Actually, to me, Mandai Post Office is not something that's very dear to me. But every year during Qingming period, when we need to pay our respect to my grandmother, I will actually pass by the post office. And what is really amazing is that the place still has the letterbox, the old design letterbox, where you can see Singapore and other country, which is the old Singapore Telecom style. And it brought back a lot of nostalgic feelings for me, because it reminded me of the time whereby, you know, we don't really use email, and every time it's all about, you know, sending letters and pasting stamps. I guess the place serves as a yearly reminder of my grandma's death anniversary. Every time we pass by the place, you sort of speaks to me in a certain way whereby, hey, one more year have passed, and one more year your grandmother have left you. So yeah, that place is remotely close to me in a very ironical way.
1976年的时候搬来这边，就是到现在我们都没有什么改变到。我父亲做的那个地点呢，以前是里面是一间戏院来的，可能那个戏院就是没有生意了，所以他们就分割成好像一间的小店，就出租给人哦。他在那个相馆的楼梯口，就是摆了一个小摊位哦，感觉到这个笔还可以做，然后他就搬去了一个比较大的地方哦，叫做载筒来那个地方，就开始他的笔的生涯。除了他修理那些笔，我就是没有办法学上手了，因为那些旧笔要修理的话，需要一些经验。因为如果你没有经验的话，你会把人家的旧笔呢弄坏呀，把人家笔头弄歪呀。新加坡现在修理旧笔的人，应该只有我父亲一个了。以前有一些修理的老先生都一般都不在的了。对笔我就觉得可能就是我终身的职业咯，我就是会继续做下去了，做到我不能做为止。
In the heart of the CBD area, just right at the side of Maxwell Market, there's this little secret, a secret which I personally really enjoy using it every day. It's actually a lift. A lift which brought me back to time, to the early 50s, where Singapore just started. This lift is really those very old lifts where it has those metal handles. You need to open these handles and the gate to enter the lift, and when you press the button, it doesn't close by itself. You need to close it, and that's where you can take the lift up to the next level. Yeah, so this is that amazing little secret that is still around right now. To be honest, I take this lift every single day. So every time I take this lift, it just brought me back to traveling back to time, like where it used to be back in the early 40s. No doubt, we have all seen it in the movies, but it's really a great experience just to take this lift and experience the whole nostalgic feeling all over again. I think this is one of the only lifts which I believe it is at this state in Singapore right now.
I come to Singapore to sightseeing. In this place, a lot of old photographs, like cinema, old street, old building, old train station. Even the telephone operation. I like this place because all charming. This place remind me of the 70s, like an old movie. I can meet many different people and different countries. I think I miss this place when I go back.
小时候呢，因为我母亲是那个西加莫人嘛，西干嘛的。每逢过年过节的时候，或者是我的公公啊、婆婆生日的时候，就是有任何的这种庆祝啊、什么人生日啊，那个小镇地方就会有很多活动。那我妈妈就会带我们几个小孩一起回这个西加莫，然后我们的交通那个时候就是火车，所以我从小就是常常搭火车去马来西亚。小的时候搭火车是一个很兴奋的事情哦，因为可以去玩嘛。它给我的感觉就是一个很热闹、很人气的一个地方。整个建筑的特色是马来风味，一个传统的一个特色在那边，所以对我来说就是很独特的一个地方。小时候我们的火车那个时候是它沿途会停蛮多站的，然后很多小贩会在那个车窗边卖东西，反正你想到能够吃的东西都会卖这样子，所以他甚至会有些还会上到车厢来卖东西，所以我们都会很期待沿途可以买东西吃。还有就是我觉得搭火车一个好处是你沿途可以看很多风景，还有看到很多人家啊、村子啊这样子，觉得是一种旅行的那种趣味吧。我记得那个火车站外面那个时钟啊，已经停摆很多年了，是一个很有趣的现象啊。但是要相比起来，往年的那种热闹景象已经不在，现在是真的比较冷清一点。但是对我来说，搭火车还是一个让我期待的事情哦。
I used to play tennis with my friends on the clay courts next to the airport runway. We'd be there almost every week. There used to be this ritual of surrendering your IC at the guardhouse, and then the long walk to the courts. I don't think the buses actually ran into the base. The airbase itself was, even then, like another world. What stuck out was that the houses had no fences. It made for a totally different landscape from the regular landed estates. Each home has a fence and a gate. And I used to imagine it was what the England from my Enid Blyton books was like, especially since all the streets had such English-sounding names. One day when we were playing tennis, a hijacked plane from Vietnam landed. I can't remember how we knew it was a hijacked plane. Maybe we didn't know at the time, and only found out later on the nightly news. But I remember the scene vividly. This small, by jetliner standards, this small plane landed and stayed either on or just beside the runway, and all these police cars and fire engines raced towards it and then encircled the plane. It was quite exciting, as you might imagine, especially for a bunch of boys like us. As an adult, I always dream. When I dream, I often dream of my old school and or my old house, those lampposts. And definitely, you know, the Seletar Air Base is also part of my memory and my subconscious. And seeing that actually erased in real life is really quite a shock.
The abandoned railroad is located at the Bukit Timah area. Actually, it stretches for quite long. It starts somewhere at the Bukit Timah station where the live railway is still running, and it stretches all the way towards Jurong, along AYE, towards the Jurong Industrial. It is special to me because I used to hike there when I was in junior college. That was back in 2001 and 2002. At the time, the railway had been abandoned for maybe 6-7 years. It is quite a challenge to actually walk through at that point of time because I think at the time not many people know about it. Our school's outdoor activity club is one of the first clubs to actually hike the route. We have to bring like parangs with us and everything, and we have to kind of bash our way through the forest because it was so overgrown. I hope that the railway tracks can be preserved, you know, for future generation because I mean it is historic and I think it means something in the history of Singapore. Really, the industries in the west side really depend on this railway track to ferry out the resources to that area. Now that the place is it's changing very, very rapidly. You know, parts of the railway tracks have been torn down to make way for expansion. I mean, that's why I say it's kind of an impossible little wish on my side, because I guess that these changes are inevitable, and of course, new things become old over time. So I think this is just part and parcel of life, I guess.
Place will always leave the sweetest memory heart because during the first flush of romance was my secondary school classmate. We were both extremely shy. But on our first outing alone, somehow found ourselves walking at Lower Pierce for a few hours just as the sun was setting.